regular folks are just not getting represented. What I mean by regular folks, I mean you got the right wing wackadoos. They're all the MAGA crazies that are.
Oh yeah, I gotta mention a couple things before we get into it. I am the one on the left. Yes. The stream's only gonna be up for maybe an hour and a half or so. The what do you call it? Because it's the first stream, might not a lot of topics to cover. At the end, if you guys want to answer any questions about the anime side, I'll be happy to stick around for a few minutes and answer questions about that. And there's one other thing. Shoot, I'm trying to think.
I was going to say what?
Yeah,
we're gonna basically kind of we're gonna do it ad libbed. We're not, at least not right at first. We don't have an itinerary. We don't have a list of things going on. We're gonna just freestyle it basically. At least for the first couple, and then after that, we'll figure out how we're gonna structure it as we go. We're gonna, as they say, throw it against the wall, see what sticks. Okay, you want to get started?
Yep.
You want to drive? You're gonna
first
drive?
Face cam. This is not my first face cam video, surprisingly. If you check back to, I think, a couple of other my very old videos, like years ago, I had face cam, but this will be my first official, and my face has been shown on a bunch of other YouTube channels. MDog5, Wave Chicken, all that junk. My face has been revealed.
You should look up there. That's where they are.
So
they're not over there.
This is my first official face cam video on the cameras. I'm looking at the chat as well. So guys, stick around for a while if you want, and let's get talking. So first things first. When you're talking about the Iran situation.
Yeah. Well, this I was perusing the I go through the different articles and I see what's going on, read some things, and try to stay abreast of what's going on in the world. And of course, this is off the AP site, Associated Press. It says analysis, and then stakes rise as Iran can fuel, quote, several atom bombs. Now, I mean, this was not hard to see coming down the pike. I remember, of course, this is one where we have our Fuhrer, Donnie the Dickhead, to thank, because, at the time, Iran was part of the nuclear deal, which, of course, half the country was squawking about, because apparently they don't remember anything past 1981. I was a little kid, but I actually remember the Iran hostage crisis. I remember hearing about them having, bugs and things in the milk that they were giving the prisoners. And believe me, I was just like every other good red-blooded American boy. I hated Iran's guts, and I wanted them all to die. But as I got older, I still really don't like the country too much, because of the regime. But I've met a lot of people from Iran, and it turns out they're nice and just like us. So, so I guess I don't want to see that. I would just like to see the regime change back to something a little less theocratic. Anyway, long story short, Donnie, was, I forgot how many it was. It was more than a dozen of our intelligence agencies, all the usual, 3-letter acronyms, whether, FBI, CIA, NSA, and then a whole pile of other ones that you never even hear about.
You might want to explain. So when he says Donnie, it's President Donald Trump, the 45th U.S. president.
Yeah, I have a hard time referring to him as that because he was never deserving. The gall that you would have to for this guy to even run after he dodged the draft is that one thing unto itself is enough that should have kept him out of the race. But that's a whole different subject. We'll get into that another time. Anyway, this is a perfect example of how he was inept, stupid, just generally thick-headed,
yeah,
and didn't want to listen to anybody, and he thinks he knows everything, and walked around, acting like a petulant 10-year-old, like a 6th grader. Just
Yeah, every time he says Donnie the Dickhead, it's Donald Trump.
Yeah, well, and unless somebody comes up with a better name, that's you could give me your ideas. But anyway, I remember at the time, yeah, there was. I actually had to look up like 6 of the different 3-letter acronyms. I didn't even know what they were. I'd never even heard of them. When I saw the list that they had that they were printing out all the different agencies that were advising the president that as far as they knew, Iran was sticking to the deal, and they were playing ball as it were. Not to mention every one of our allies in all of Europe, everybody that so their 3-letter acronyms, whether it's the Germans or the French or the Brits, or like MI6, MI5. I always forget which one's which. But they're both pretty much doing the same stuff. I mean, these are people that it's their job to have intelligence on what's the goings on in the world, and every single one of them, without exception, was advising the United States, was advising Donnie that the Iranians are playing ball. They're doing what they said they were going to do, and by playing ball, that means they weren't trying to get the material or trying to build atomic weapon or nuclear weapons. So, it looked as if they were doing what they said they were going to do. They were acting in good faith, and then here comes Donnie, some real estate developer from New York. Which, like, let's put it this way: if you can't make money, if you go bankrupt selling real estate in New York City, that's like going bankrupt selling water in a desert. I mean, a retarded beagle would find a way to make money.
I don't think you can say retarded.
Even if it's talking about a beagle?
Yes.
Okay, well, I don't mean to insult any of the beagles or beagles owners. I like Snoopy. And I used to have a beagle, and so I mean no disrespect towards any beagle lovers or whatnot, and so I retract that statement. Okay, a mentally challenged beagle would still make money off of real estate in New York City. It's like foolproof. I mean, but this idiot, that would be Donnie, found a way to fuck that up. I mean, he owned a casino where every single game is designed for the house to win, for him to make money, and found a way to fuck that up. This guy, anything he's ever touched has turned to shit. If you know the story of King Midas, he's the anti-Midas. Midas touches things, they turn to gold, and Donnie touches things, and it turns to shit. And that's been proven for decade after decade after decade. So why anybody would think that he would make a good president is laughable. But I do remember this. I remember at the time, he was also doing some... I can't remember if this was Iran or if this was him talking about North Korea. But afterwards, after something, I remember he's typed out on the Twitter about how... something about sleep well, America, like he did us some kind of a favor. And all I know is this is the Iranians now, according to the Associated Press, who I tend to believe, because they actually, vet their information and their people and their reporters, and they've been doing a good job for a long time of reporting actual facts and news and not just crazy ideas. So I tend to believe what they have to say, even if it is analysis, because they don't have morons doing analysis on the Associated Press. It's this isn't Newsmax. This isn't Fox. This is the Associated Press. So, yeah, I just remember thinking when I heard that, like, I'm never gonna sleep well again with this guy being in charge. And sure enough, here you go. A few years down the pike, Iran, we're back at each other's throats again. We just like it was when I was a little kid, when I was like I was saying, when I was like 9, 10, 11 years old. Iran was part of the axis of evil. That's they were always the bad guy, and then it looked like things might be looking up just for a minute, and here comes Donnie to hit the rewind button and fuck that up good and proper for what will probably be another 20 years before they get back to playing ball. And that's a shame, because that's the way you defeat these guys, is you get them to play nice with all of us over here in civilization. That's and they don't seem to. I heard something too. They just don't seem to grasp. They just keep making the same mistakes, the same tough guy bullshit over and over and over again. And well, I mean that's pretty. I mean I've beat this horse to death as it is. What do you have anything to add, or do you think I've gone a little nuts, or
money? I mean that's a big portion of it, money.
Yeah, I see that too. Well, yeah, isn't that what it's all about? It's yeah.
But I don't see what money can be raised by getting rid of a nuclear deal between us and Iran.
I don't see that either. It's in this. I understand money is the root of why we might have stayed in Afghanistan for all those years. I get it. There's money to be made, but in this case, the well-being of humanity is. I mean, if nuclear weapons start flying around, there's a good chance that we're all gonna be obliterated. Like, so money's not gonna mean much. You can't take it with you like the pharaohs did, you know. Like, it's not gonna do you any good. Money's gonna mean fuck all on the other side, you know. So I don't know, but yeah, it's just it was, if it was a cartoon or a movie, it would have been comical how utterly ridiculous the whole thing was, you know. And ridiculous seems to be the recurring theme of that administration, and not just that one either, because it's almost a recurring theme for every administration. There's always, it's just that he seemed to really specialize in being ridiculous. That idiot Donnie Boy there. I mean, but all the other ones, Democratic side too. I see and hear ridiculous things all the time, and it just mystifies me how it's allowed to go on and continue when, like, regular people. This is the thing. I understand how most people see this bullshit, and how most people feel about this bullshit, and what most people think. You know, because I am just another one of you, you know. So it's you know what I'm saying? Like when I'm from an age, like I straddle the old days and the new days. As far as you know, I'm 49, if anyone was wondering. And so you know, so I mean, I've had computers in my life, but I also remember a time when they weren't around, you know, which for a little while. I remember when there was only a few stations, no cable. I actually remember this. Lived it, actually. You had to sit in assigned seats because if you got up and moved, the reception would get fucked up. You couldn't see the TV. Like, I know that's hard to believe, but that's the way people lived, you know.
That's the least concerning thing, is scaring them. I think fear is the least worrisome thing if a nuclear bomb was launched.
Who said that? What's this?
It's a commenter.
Oh.
I think being like an entire species and all living like life on Earth being eradicated is a more concerning thought than how someone's feeling about nuclear bombs.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. Is, I mean, it's like they don't even understand the stakes anymore. This is what I was trying to get at just now when I was talking about the old days. Is if you're my age, we have like a lot of collective experience. See, now there's so much stuff out there. There's so many different things going on. It's like nobody's on the same page anymore, because it's like you know, everybody with different interests hangs around with just people that have the same interests, and nobody gets to, you know, there's no commonality anymore. And when I say no, I mean there is, but there seems to be less of. Now, when I was younger, we all had, you know, common experiences, and so that we can all draw off of. So we seem to be able to at least agree on, you know, what reality was. And if somebody said something outlandish that was complete falsehood, they would be called out on it. You know, I mean, there was always spin politically, but if you said that the moon was made out of Swiss cheese, then, you know, just because your people wouldn't back you up on that, it's ridiculous. Your people would say, no, it's not. Shut up. And that's, they would, it's not now. It's, 50% lines up on one side and 50% on the other side, and whatever my jerky idiot says, it's automatically gospel. And not, and that's that's not a way to, like, run a nation, to run anything, to run a corner store. You can't run it that way. It's ridiculous. Now I got off on a tangent there, because you
should go back to trading like the Middle Ages.
Yeah, maybe it's at this point I'd be willing, like, to, I mean,
go back to exchanging like metals and whatnot instead of like paper.
Well, it would probably be a good idea to start thinking about how can we solve some of these problems. I don't like. I'm tired of both sides trying to feed me a steaming pile of shit and tell me that it's cake. I'm tired of it. They both pull the same crap. They give you a bunch of statistics. Oh, there's 200,000 new jobs. Oh, and the whatever, this pie chart and this bar graph says, oh, well, this thing, everyone's life's gotten better, and this says this, and of course then the other guys come and they say, no, this says this, and you're talking about a bunch of numbers, whether it's and it's just, it doesn't even jive. It doesn't even make any sense. It's nobody cares if there's 200,000. I mean, these are just numbers that don't mean anything. It's a country of 330 million people.
I think 60 million at this point.
I don't even know. I'd have to look it up.
It's more than 330 though.
But it's either way, that kind of number is so staggering. It's almost incomprehensible how large that is. In terms of things that are real and things that, and so then when someone says, oh, 100,000 jobs, well, what does that even mean? But anyway, hang on. We want to try to keep this a little more cohesive. I don't want to just ramble. I want to make sure we stay on certain subjects here. So, because we'll have time to talk about anything we want, and I want to make sure we have a little more, like I said, a little more structure this a little bit better. You can take that off if you want. That's and put on something else, or it's just an example of, all of these guys. Literally, I think they said 23 different agencies said, that they're playing ball, and then Donnie just says, no, they're not. Oh, okay. I guess he said it, so that's just our reality now. These other guys, that's all they do. And that's all they've done. And meanwhile, Donnie's expertise is what? Losing money?
So
being a scumbag and shysting people, suing business by lawsuit? Like, what? That's his expertise? Well, if he was a lawyer, that might be impressive, but he's not. So why would anybody? I'm not saying you want to be a Republican, fine. You want to be conservative, fine. There's some of the arguments, maybe they hold a little water, but not when some idiot like Donnie's saying, no, they're not. When 23 agencies are telling them, yeah, they're playing ball, move on to the next subject. It's and then when you support idiocy like that, you become just another idiot. Like you lose credibility when you're backing up somebody that's just saying outlandish bullshit, because so now you yourself may have been a person of respect or respectable, but now you're not, because you're backing up this idiot. You know what I'm saying? And so anyway,
let's move on to one idiot and to another. For those who haven't or have paid attention to the what's going on in Ukraine.
Yeah, well, there's another thing that's thankfully, once again, that idiot isn't our president. Otherwise, Ukraine would have probably been run over by now, and it would have it would have been a whole different, much worse reality right now if Donnie was El Presidente, because we would have we would have burned him. We wouldn't have sent him anything. He would have gone out of his way. He was going out of his way to squeeze him before. He's always been pro-Russia. Another one of the major reasons I do not like that man at all is he's done everything short of licking the back of Putin's balls for it. In fact, maybe he did. All the interpreters were told to leave the room and not have notes or anything else. Who the fuck knows what was? I wouldn't rule anything out, in all honesty, because it's like he's in love with that fucking guy, and that goes from way back when he was just running for president, and they were asking him, "Who do you most admire?" And you could have said Jesus Christ, like anybody on the planet that's ever walked on the planet. You could have said Christ. You could have said Gandhi. If you wanted to say a military guy, you could have said Julius fucking Caesar. But no, he picked Vladimir Putin. That was the first. That was his first. Blowing him a kiss from across the other side of the world over the airwaves, and then that's all. It's like he went out of his way to. It's like he was. It was as if he was trying to make Putin's life better, easier, and help the Russians. If I didn't know any better, and I don't know any better, I would think that he was working for the Ruskies. And now some people might be like, oh, well, who cares? A lot of the MAGA heads, they seem to think Russia's great because they're white. Well, I'm here to tell you, let's put it in perspective. They got 6,600 nuclear warheads, and a good most of them are aimed at you and me. And I'm certain that in Africa, the only ones there that have any nuclear weapons, as far as I know, is South Africa.
South Africa has, I think, if they don't have nuclear weapons now, the production of.
No, they've had them for some time. That's a fact. I know they have them. I just don't know if anyone else does. Egypt or somebody maybe, but I don't think so. South Africa definitely has them. That's a fact. We'll look that up later. But I'm pretty sure that they don't aim any of them at us. So and definitely none of the other countries, none of those folks are aiming any weapons at us. So not anything that's going to fly over the ocean and land on top of your head. That's for sure. So my point is that if you want to get a little perspective, you want to think there's some kind of brotherhood with Whitey on the other side of the planet. Their interests, Russian interests, are counter to American.
To be
interests.
clear, when he's talking about Russia, he doesn't mean like the entire population of Russia. He's talking about like the Russian government and the higher ups and the like people in groups called the Wagner, and most of the corporate Russia and all those guys, the ones who run the country, not really much the Russian people.
Yeah, right. Well, of course. Whenever I'm talking about a nation,
so
I'm not a.
So when we talk about nations, unless we're specifically labeling groups, it's mostly like the government of that nation, not the nation itself.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because I was starting.
Because they're all good Russians, like the opposition leader in Russia. I forgot his name.
I know who you mean. I'm drawing a total blank. There's lots. Yeah, don't.
Red Caps, basically. Yeah.
I'm glad that you did say that because I don't want people thinking I'm just just angry, banging beating that drum.
He's
and
being
yelling and
anti-Russian, anti-Slovak people or whatnot.
Well, no, that's not it at all. But what I am though is I am an actual patriot. I love my home. I love my country. I love what America could be, what it should be, what in a lot of ways it is. And in a lot of ways we fall short. But everybody falls short, So I'm not saying that we're any worse, or what I'm saying is that my loyalty and my love is here, and with that in mind, any other government that is
continue insulting bad political leaders. Yeah, okay, we're gonna get to it.
Don't worry, I'm sure. But at the end of the day, the nation of Russia, as it is being run right now. Their interests are counter to the interests of the United States. Plain and simple.
Does Russia have alliances? Yes, they have. I believe they have a couple alliances. They have
Serbia.
They have Serbia.
Them and the Serbs love each other.
They have Belarus. They have Syria. They have a couple of financials. Syria, yeah. Like they have the Eurasian financial. They have BRICS, which is a bunch of like smaller countries like Brazil, South Africa, India, China, and Russia. They all have like an economic thing. It's similar to like the EU. So Russia does have alliances, but they're the strongest of the alliance, and the second is like nothing compared to them when it comes to military.
Yeah, unlike just to be clear, China and them sorta are allied.
It's more like the enemy of my enemy is my friend, but even that's like we're not friends, we're business partners, and that's it.
Right. They're more than happy to buy oil real cheap if it comes on the market. So the Ruskies need some money for their little war. And the Chinese are like, yeah, we'll buy any and all oil you feel like selling to us because we're going to use it. But otherwise, then they said that we have an unlimited partnership, and that's how far their partnership has gone. They've done zero far as lifting a finger because let's face it, I'm sure they were on paper more apt to try to help their Russian friends. That is, of course, until they stumbled drunk into a country they thought were going to run. Everyone in the world thought they were going to walk over in 3-4 weeks, and here we are a year later, and they're getting their asses kicked. And you could say, oh yeah, the Western weapons. Well, sure, but not so much in the early days. In the early days, they still held them back and fought them back. So you got to give them a lot of credit where credit's due. They had to have been pretty. They had to have some very serious spine, balls, and brains and conviction to hold that giant onslaught back. Now, since then, sure, we've helped them out. By we, I mean the West, not just the United States, but us, the United States, and everybody else. Well, and the reason being is not just because we're all in love with the Ukraine. It's because it's in our interest. It's in our interest that Russia does not turn back into the old Soviet Union. It's in our interest to not go back to the Cold War as it was prior to 1990. It's in our interest to not have nations rolling over other nations militarily. It's in all of our interest that there's peace on the planet for the most part. Certainly nothing major we can't allow.
We can't allow our one sovereign nation to invade another sovereign nation, basically unprovoked.
Yeah, I mean it was yeah.
And even then, it's like we're in the 21st century. The days of imperial or direct imperialism are over. We have like financial imperialism and quasi-imperialism,
right?
Like the U.S. commits. But we don't like.
Well, we're not the only ones. The Chinese are doing it too.
But it's not like we're outright invading countries like it's the 1900s when it comes to the scramble for Africa and whatnot.
Now, the argument to that is, of course, weren't you in that place Afghanistan for the last 20 years? And we were. But yeah, okay. So you got to qualify it. You can't invade places where there's like industry. It's you can invade a place. I'm being half a wise guy and trying to be a little bit funny because what I'm talking about isn't funny, but it is the way things work. If you're not one of those top 30 countries economically speaking, well then our collective interest
gets muddied.
Whether it be morally, ethically, that, it all kind of falls by the wayside. It's if you're not on that top 30 list. I'm sorry to say, I don't think it's right. I think it's very wrong. I think it's bullshit. But it's the way things are. And so I'd like to solve a lot of problems, but I could probably list out 50,000 problems. We should worry about the top couple of thousand first, and then we'll get to figuring everything out as time goes on. You know what I'm saying? But it's a little different. You also have to have some kind of. Oh, and by the way, we went into Iraq. Both times were bullshit, actually. The first one was complete bullshit. Nobody knows this for some reason. I don't know why. But our State Department green-lighted Saddam to invade Kuwait back in 1990. I forgot how it was phrased, but basically we phrased it something along the lines of...
Someone thought of anti-nuclear weapons. Reagan did in the 80s.
Well, no, let's be clear. Reagan didn't think it up. Real, actual smart scientists thought it up.
But he wanted to like implement an anti-nuke shield or whatnot.
It was they called the program Star Wars back then. Back then, this is in the 80s. It was science fiction. It was never going to be done. Except then I remember reading a few years ago that they actually perfected the science behind it, behind the lasers and this and that. The trouble is to my knowledge, as best as it works, is that for starters, when they got so many thousands of them, a lot of them are going to get through anyway. And the problem is that, okay, I'm going to answer this question a little more thoroughly. This you might actually find very interesting. We're going to go off on a little sidebar here. During Donnie's administration, there was a congressional, I think it was the House had, they ordered up what do they call that? I'm drawing a blank on the word. A study. I'm sorry. That's not the word I was looking for, but that's what we'll call it. They ordered up a study. I guess things were getting hot over on the border between Pakistan and India, as they oftentimes do. And both Pakistan and India have are both armed with nuclear weapons, and have been since I believe the 60s. Anyway, so what the study was if something was to pop off, like between say India and Pakistan or anywhere else in the world where it wasn't like us and the Russians just unleashing both of our arsenals and obliterating the planet 7 times. If a much smaller, more localized conflict was to happen, and that's the one that we're concerned about, then how would it affect the planet? How would it affect the United States? What would be the outcome, basically? That was what the study ordered. I think I might have told you about this.
Yeah, you told me.
Anyway, what they concluded, the funny thing is, no, not funny haha, funny fucked up, is that the original report, I forgot how many pages it was, but it actually they had to take the original report back and then dumb it down and condense it down so much because so many members of Congress apparently are too fucking stupid to read the language that they speak since birth and read the words and form ideas and then grasp thoughts.
I always like to say this joke. We don't speak English, we speak American.
Yeah, well, either way, they couldn't read it, and they couldn't they just couldn't grasp what they were reading, so they had to dumb it down, so that.
No, America's an interesting place. This is real stuff.
Yeah, I'm not making this up. So anyway, one of the main ideas of this report was very simply this: was that if 10 of these nuclear weapons were to go off, then it would effectively wreck the climate so bad that it would result in at least a few 100,000 Americans starving to death. They had to break it down into numbers that people in Congress could understand, so that if this happens here, then 300,000 Americans starve to death. Of course, it doesn't say that if they're starving to death, then the rest of us probably aren't doing all that good either. I don't think that was even in the report. But the point is that yeah, that's why was I going into that?
Going into that because something about nuclear weapons and all that jazz. I don't know specifically why.
Oh, you're supposed to see. You got to keep track of this when I start going off on a tangent. That's gonna be our division of labor. Anyway, well, I forgot even why I was telling you that, but that's actually very true. Another little sidebar on that was that the Donnie's administration, I don't remember who, was trying to squash that report from coming out. But
anti-nuclear weapons research. That's what we're talking about. Weapons for anti-nuclear. and you were saying like it doesn't matter if we have that, and some nukes are gonna get in, and you need at least 12 nukes. There was a report saying at least 12 nukes would wreck the climate enough.
No, 10. They said 10.
10?
Yeah, it was 10. So either way, 10 or 12, but that's the whole thing. So if Star Wars was something that actually existed, it still doesn't even matter, because at least 10 of these things are going to get through, and it's going to cause, I mean, very real, very almost basically instantaneous catastrophe. Not it's not the argument that you hear between one side or the other about climate change. Some think that it's happening, some not. This would be instantaneous climate change that would affect us all and basically wreck a lot of the planet, and it would not be a good place to live for any of us after that, because things would get real Darwin real fast when food is short, and with the amount of guns in this country, food got scarce, but guns aren't. I mean, that's not a good recipe for anything good.
For those who don't know, like America's gun, I forgot when this was, so the number could have increased. But I read somewhere that for every one American, there's at least 2 guns, or for every one pet, there's at least 2 guns in an American household on average. Just
to be clear, too, to add to that, when I was about your age, when I was 17, 18. The statistic was there was 1 gun for every American. So, and at the time, the population was about 260 million, give or take, and there's about 260 million guns that were legally owned and registered in the United States. So since then, that number has not only increased with the population, but then it increased with the population and then doubled.
So if we were to break it down into simple numbers, if there's about 360 million Americans, there's about at least 700 million guns in circulation at any point in a given year.
That's an awful lot. And to be clear, I'm not a anti-gun guy. I don't have a problem. I just like we were talking about. I think we'll probably wrap up for the night in a minute here. Let me circle it back to where we began. In the future, we're gonna we'll try to have a little bit more structure. We'll have a topic, and we'll try to stick to it. 1 or 2 things each time, and then we'll time it out for a certain amount of time, and then what we'll do then is we'll address some of the questions or comments at a certain part of our little broadcast, and so then we'll give it a little more structure, so it's a little less off the wall. This is our first little experiment, but we will tighten it up as we go. I can promise you that. Also, I'll do a little bit more actual homework beforehand too, not just flying off the cuff. But anyway, yeah, I mean, it's there's a lot of things that I know that we're not the only guys thinking about this stuff. We're not the only guys that are worried about it, and I'm thinking that maybe us, what was once referred to as the silent majority, maybe it's time that we start talking.
If that were to happen, would humans go extinct? Yes, the planet would become unlivable. Like no life would, except maybe cockroaches. But if nuclear weapons go off, like I said, 10 of them, at least 200,000 Americans would die of starvation. Just starvation alone a year. That's just
to begin with, and that's if 10 of them went off. We have 4,500. The Russians have 6,600. Of these things are all pointing at each other. I mean, every day in Russia, they're just talking all willy-nilly about nuclear war, about bombing this and that and everything else, as if that's going to scare us. What they don't understand is the guys up on top. This is what some of them. This is what they live for. Is to think about how to make war and how to survive. So they got their bunkers for 75 years worth of, so I guess they figured that, I don't know what they're figuring, to be perfectly frank. All I know is this. Anyway, let's not refer to any more of this, because otherwise we'll be here all night. But yeah, like I was saying, we're going to try to get a little more structure. I'll do a little bit more homework, and we'll
organize this better.
Yeah, we'll get organized a little bit better. We'll definitely work it out over the next couple, and we'll get some structure. We'll make it like a show would be, and we'll have a couple of topics that we'll go over. And then also I was thinking maybe we'll get some topics from some of the people if they're going to be cool enough to listen to us. then we can certainly talk about what's on their mind too. But yeah, I mean, with the way things are going in the world lately, nuclear weapons is something that's definitely on my mind. It's really sad because for a lot of years it hasn't been. And when I grew up, it was. I'm in the tail end of the Cold War. I still remember going to school and then having us hiding under desks for civil defense drills. And I was an 8-year-old kid, and I knew that was completely fucking ridiculous. I already knew that was futile as an 8-year-old. But what are you gonna do? Argue with the lady who's the teacher? You can't do that. So not when you're 8. So anyway, so what our stream is going to be about is going to be what's going on in the world of politics and current events, basically, and that's and we're going to take it from there. What do you think? You want to add anything? Or...
Like I said, I'll stay on the stream for a few minutes, answer any questions you have about the anime side. This main channel, I won't be posting the political. Like maybe I'll make. In the live stream, I'll make videos on the political live streams, but I won't post them on this channel. I'll make a separate channel if you guys want to check that out in the meantime. But for live stream wise, it's much easier to do it on the main channel since everything's connected for the meantime. So if you guys want to listen to when we all live stream in politics, you're welcome to it. If you don't, that's fine. But I will make other live streams other than politics by myself, and then once in a while we'll do the political podcast as well.
Yeah, I think we'll try to do ours, like, for starters, like, twice a week. Like, today's Friday.
Twice a week.
And, yeah, well, there's plenty to talk about, that's for sure. Unfortunately, I could probably keep yapping until dawn. I don't know if anyone would want to listen that long. But I know I could certainly talk about this stuff for that long. So, anyway, let's sign off.